Hi guys! I can't believe January is already over. The first month of 2020 is already over. That's crazy. I feel so behind. I didn't get a chance to put up my December wrap up because I was too busy traveling and having a bunch of other work stuff and grad school stuff. And then before I knew it, January was over too. I'm so behind in booktube videos. I'm still watching things from last year and the start of January. So I am sorry if I'm not caught up on booktube and I'm behind in everything. I'm out of the loop for any readathons or anything that's happening right now. I'm working on catching up, and as part of my catching up, I decided to do my December and January wrap-ups mashed together. I didn't read that much in December because I was still going through a sort of reading slump at that point, so I only have a few books to talk about there, but in January I started to get my reading stride back, so I have a bit more to talk about, and I'm very excited because I found some amazing new things. So let's just get started. So the first and only book that I finished in December was the Book of Nostra by Luke Raven. I got this for free on Playbooks, I believe. It's a self-published fantasy book where a brother-sister pair write a fantasy book and then they find themselves trapped in their fantasy world. It was so much fun and it was a great concept, but it did falter a bit in the characters and the writing and the plot. The main problem I had with it were the character interactions. They were really cringy. There were scenes where the characters would suddenly start crying or screaming with no previous indication. It's like they were talking normally, and then they're suddenly crying, and it didn't make really any sense. The way that the parents were acting didn't really make sense either for the situations they were in. And the things all of the characters said to each other were just really awkward, cringy dialogue. The only pair that was done well is the brother-sister. They were really good together. I didn't cringe at any of that, really. It did tend to go slightly into like one-dimensional territory with the brother-sister, but they had the most depth out of all of them. All of the other interactions were really bad between like the parents and child and the boyfriend, girlfriend, and the friends. It was just not very good. I wasn't believing any of it at all. It was all very stereotypical, very cookie cutter, and really, really awkward. I also had a problem with the writing. There were a lot of really cringy phrases where it would be like, oh, if the shoe was on the other foot, or two birds with one stone, and they would say that so frequently that it was just really weird because no one talks like that. Even in the exposition, no one talks like that. No one writes like that. It was just really awkward. And then lastly, the pacing was kind of weird. It didn't really feel like it was going anywhere through the majority of the book. It was just kind of meandering through the world, which was fine. I didn't really have a problem with that, but I couldn't really tell where the climax was. I sort of could, and it was like right at the end and very sudden. There was no build up to it and no resolution to it either. So it was kind of a cliffhanger ending, but it was also very abrupt. Like it came out of nowhere and then the book ended, and I was just really confused by it. I enjoyed the concept enough to want to finish the book. I really did want to know where the story turns out, but the writing and the issues that I have with it kind of make me not want to continue the series. I think I did enjoy it overall. It was just a few nagging issues that kind of brought my enjoyment down. I also DNF'd one book in December, which was The Snow Queen by Joan Vinge. This is a hard sci-fi that is very political. It's set in a world where a Snow Queen is very corrupt and trying to hold on to her power as her power wanes. I just never really got into the story. It wasn't really interesting to me in the plot, and the characters I didn't connect to or care for at all. The writing was also a bit confusing, again, just in the exposition. It was just written really weirdly, so I couldn't really understand what was happening. And the world was just so complicated, and I had no interest in sitting there and trying to figure it out, so I ended up giving up at 18%. It's just not my kind of thing. Like I said, December I didn't read very much, so moving straight on into January, the first book I finished was The Tiger's Daughter by Arsenault Rivera. This is an Asian fantasy story featuring an FF romance that I enjoyed for the most part. It's told mainly in a letter from one character to the other that basically recounts their entire lives, and they believe that they're gods, so it goes on all of these crazy adventures and it shows all of their wins and all of their mistakes. I enjoyed reading from the characters' perspective. I found I was able to connect with them and I really enjoyed them. I also really enjoyed the world, but I don't think it was explained enough. I wish I knew more about it because it seems very interesting because it is Asian inspired, and I can see some of the connections between Japanese and Chinese and the Mongols, but how the world works and how the magic works weren't really explained at all, and I wish I knew more about those. It had a really steady plot for the most part. I don't feel like there was any major parts that were rushed or too slow. So it was pretty good and I enjoyed myself, but it wasn't great. I'm not sure at this point if I'm going to continue in the series or not, but if I happen to get in the mood, I might pick it up again. And then I read a new manga that I was very excited for, and that's A Tropical Fish Yearns for Snow by Makoto Hagino. And this is about two high schoolers who meet in an aquarium club at their school, which firstly, that sounds amazing and I love it so much. And it follows their friendship and budding romance, and it's so cute. I thought this first volume was an adorable introduction to the characters. I'm already enjoying them and I can't wait to see where the story goes. I would like a few more fish, but that's because I'm biased and I really like aquariums. But the story itself and the characters themselves are also really adorable and really cute and really sweet, and I can't wait to continue the series. I don't normally buy manga. I don't really buy books actually, but everything about this plot just sounded so amazing, and Ray from Whimsical Pictures was raving about it so very much that I knew I had to have it. It has an aquarium club in a high school romance, and it's just, you can't win my heart any easier. And then I went on a Terry Pratchett Discworld binge, starting with Hogfather by Terry Pratchett, obviously. This was the book club pick for December for the Sword and Laser book club, so I was a little bit behind, but I still wanted to read it anyway. This is the 4th book in the Death subseries and the 18th book in the full Discworld series. I am not sure on that one. I am reading the Discworld series chronologically, which is why this is a little bit further along than I am, so I don't really know what number it's at. But because it was the pick for the book club, I decided to read it anyway. Plus, it was super Christmassy, and even though it was January, I was still kind of in the mood for Christmas, so this worked perfectly. This book is about the Hogfather, who is the equivalent of Santa Claus in this world, and he goes missing, so Death ends up taking his place and pretending to be the Hogfather. I just found this book to be very fun, as most Discworld books are. Terry Pratchett has a way of imbuing social commentary into his Discworld books, so for example, in this one, it was mainly about like the commercialization of Christmas, and he does it in a way that's really humorous and makes you start thinking, but doesn't make you despair over like the reality of the world. Everything in here was just really clever, and there was a lot happening in the plot. Terry Pratchett tends to like skip around the Discworld and follow multiple different people at different points, and they go on their own little like subpaths to get to where you're trying to go in the end, which can be a little disjointed, but I think it worked a little bit better in here than I've seen in his past books. There were some characters in here that I was unfamiliar with, which just reinforces my desire to read them all in chronological order, because while they are independent series that can be read independently, it definitely helps to see all of the characters that are brought in because he has a lot of crossover. It's all in the same world, so you're going to get a lot of the same characters through all of the different books. So I'm glad that I'm reading it in chronological order, and so I'll be able to see all of the characters as they get introduced and get their backstory as they come into later books. Also, in this book, he made one of the creepiest, scariest characters I've ever read, which was really unexpected for me because Discworld is really fun and humorous and funny, and then I was like actually scared of this person, so that was very unexpected. Overall, I did enjoy this book. It was a very Christmassy read, and it was perfect for the Christmas time. Continuing in the Discworld theme, I read Death and What Comes Next by Terry Pratchett, obviously. I had this on my list of 20 books I want to read in 2020. I did not realize it was a short story. It's like really, really short. I found it online. You can read it for free. It's just about Death talking to a philosopher, and it was written for a video game just to provide a hidden game code. So it's not really super necessary to the Discworld, but if you're a big fan of the Discworld, and especially of Death in general, I think it's still a fun little story that you can get something out of. It is very skippable. I mean, it's not really very long, but if you really like Death, I think you'd enjoy it anyway. And then taking a little bit of a break from Discworld, just for a moment, I read one of my new favorite manga series that I am so excited about, and it's Lofty Flower Fall for Me by Ayano Natsume, and I read this on the Crunchyroll app, and it was just so freaking cute. There was so much in it that I absolutely loved. It's a rom-com yonkoma about a girl who uncontrollably acts like an ikemen and a boy who's trying to make her fall for him. This was just so much fun and so hilarious, and it had so many of my favorite things. I love ikemen characters. I love yonkomas because it has a bunch of humor. It's mainly a comedy, and I love that when it's a rom-com. It was from the boy's perspective, which I also really enjoy reading. I love it when you get to see like the boy who falls in love with the girl first and how he sort of reacts and how he's flustered trying to get her to like him, and it's just so cute because it's a rom-com. There's a lot of tension building and you can't really quite get to the point where they understand each other because comedy comes in the way, and it's just, I love that so much. There was so much in this story that was just right up my alley. It's not like mind-blowing or super deep in any way. It is a yonkoma. It's mainly going to be comedy, but I just enjoyed it. There were so many bits that just worked for me, and I was laughing the whole time. I was smiling the whole time, and I wanted to keep reading it. I just had so much fun with this story. There was also a few really good themes that I enjoyed that were thrown in there, so it has a bit of like a deeper thread, but not too much. It's just very light and very fun, and I would highly recommend it. I can definitely see myself coming back to this story because it was just so much fun. If you like high school romance and you like comedy, I would highly recommend it. Please read it. I haven't heard anyone talk about it, and I want more people to enjoy it with me. I will say though that the Crunchyroll app sucks terribly. It doesn't even remember which mangas you've favorited. It does keep your place when you're reading it. You just have to like scroll through and find it again because their stupid favorite function doesn't work, but whatever, it's fine. There were also some times when the pages would repeat, and I just found I had to like flip back and forth between a bunch of different pages until the new page actually loaded. So it's not the best app, but it is a legal way to read it, and I would definitely recommend that over scans any day. Next, I read The Winter of the Witch by Katherine Arden, which is the third and final book in the Winter Night trilogy. And this is a story where all of the Russian fairy tales are real, and there's one girl who is the bridge between the men and the monsters. The main thing I liked about the series was the atmosphere and the writing. I love the writing style and the way it makes you feel cold and frigid, yet you can see the beauty of Russia. I loved it so much. I also really enjoyed learning a bit more about Russian folklore because I am not familiar with it at all, and I find myths and mythology and fairy tales so interesting. As far as the plot and characters, I think they were done well, but I didn't really have any strong feelings for it. In fact, I really didn't believe the romance between Vasya and the frost demon Morosko. I felt no chemistry there throughout the series, so I didn't really care for those parts of it. I was fine with it. I was fine reading through it, but I never really felt like, oh my god, I need them to be together. I definitely think the series improved through the books. The first one I enjoyed for the atmosphere, like I said before, but it didn't really have a plot. The second one did have a plot. It picked up a bit more. I enjoyed it a bit more. And then the third one is super big and epic, and all of the plot comes in, and all of the characters all come into this massive war, and it's definitely faster paced. I really like how the magic was more of a part of the third book because I love magic. I love fantasy, obviously. So I really like how the world and the magic and everything tied together in the end. I thought it was really good. So overall, I really enjoyed reading the series. It's not an all-time favorite, but I know a lot of people really like it. So if you are interested in it, I would definitely recommend it, especially in the wintertime where you can get that beautiful atmosphere. Taking a trip back into the Discworld, we have Witches Abroad by Terry Pratchett. This is the third book in the Witches subseries and the 12th book in the Discworld series. I should really start actually keeping track of this instead of just guessing every single time. In this book, the three witches travel to distant lands in order to stop a fairy godmother. This was a really interesting book. It's a huge mishmash of different stories. So you have like Dracula and the Wizard of Oz and Cinderella, but then you also get a mixture of foreign worlds. So it's in the Discworld, so it's not technically traveling to like France and Italy and everything, but you can definitely see the ties to the world. And the main world that they're traveling to is like a New Orleans style world, which I absolutely love. I feel like I need more books set in New Orleans with like the Bayou and voodoo witches. It was just so much fun. As always, it's really entertaining, especially because you have these like 3 no-nonsense witches just blundering into all of these fairy tales and messing everything up. So it's really funny and so interesting to see how Pratchett weaves all of these different things together into one story. As usual, it's a very fun book and one of the better Discworld books that I've read so far. And then lastly, I listened to a nonfiction audiobook, which is not something I normally do, but because of the new year and all of these recommendations for self-development books, I have a bunch placed on hold at my library, and the first one came in, which was Make Time, How to Focus on What Matters Every Day by Knapp and John Zeratsky. And this is basically a guide of how to get more out of your day. It's a compilation of a bunch of different tips that you can employ, a lot of actionable items that you can do in order to spend more time doing what you want in your day and make your days more memorable. So their method basically falls into 4 steps, the first of which is to choose your highlight or your focus for the day. So it's something that you want to be able to look back on your day and remember this day for. Step 2 is laser, which just means to remove all the distractions and maintain your laser focus on your highlight. Step 3 is to energize by taking care of your body, and then step 4 is to reflect to see what worked for you and then what didn't and how to move forward. And then for each of these steps, there's a huge list of different tactics you can try. I was mainly focused on the laser step, which is to remove all distractions. That's the one that I was most interested in. For example, some of the things were to create a distraction-free phone, which I didn't go all out on because they recommend getting rid of all of your social media apps, your email, and your browser. So I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. I'm too tied to my phone for that. But I did turn off most of my notifications, and already it's made such a big difference. I finished this book like a couple days ago, and I noticed that I'm picking up my phone much less now that I don't have like random Instagram notifications on that are notifying me when someone likes a photo. And then I end up picking up my phone and like looking at it more and wasting more time, honestly. So now that I don't have those notifications, I find I'm only opening Instagram when I feel like looking at the updates, and it makes for a much less cluttered home screen for one thing, and also for a little bit less time spent on my phone. I still spend way too much time on my phone. It's actually ridiculous, but it's fine. I am slowly working my way to be a more productive person. For me, this book was nothing really revolutionary. I'm already pretty familiar with productivity and living an intentional life, but if you're someone who wants to get more into that, it's definitely a nice place to start. It has a lot of really easy tips that you can start doing in order to see a little bit of change in your life. I will continue to try and implement some of the laser tactics just because I think that's where I can improve the most. But if you're someone who's looking to try and get to a project that you've been putting off for a long time, or if you want to just dedicate more time to something, then this book is a good place to start. January was definitely a much better reading month than December or even the last couple months of the year, and I'm very glad for it. I'm so excited to be back in the reading mood, and I found such amazing mangas this month that I'm just so happy. I can't wait to continue reading, and hopefully I can keep this momentum up for a little bit yet. Let me know your favorite thing you read in January, and I will see you later. Bye.